All right, so today we're going to be diving into a case that really, I think, shook the UK.
Yeah.
You know, the murder of Sarah Everard
Right.
by a serving police officer, Wayne Couzens?
Absolutely.
And we're going to be using the YouTube documentary,
That's
Killer
it.
Cop, the tragic murder that shocked a nation to kind of guide us.
Yeah.
And, you know, we all know the headlines are grim. But what we're really after here
Yeah.
is the systemic issues that this case exposed.
Right.
It's about understanding how something so horrific could happen within law enforcement.
Well, I think what's so compelling about this case,
Yeah.
and frankly what makes it essential to unpack, is that it throws this really harsh light on this potential for abuse of power, especially against women.
Yeah.
And it's not just about, you know, a single bad apple, but about the environment that allows such an apple to exist.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So March 3rd, 2021, Sarah Everard is walking home from a friend's house in Clapham Junction.
Yeah.
A journey, you know, many of us have probably made without much thought.
Of course. Yeah.
But this time she disappears.
And it's the how of her disappearance that is particularly chilling.
Right.
Because Couzens used COVID restrictions and his police badge, essentially symbols of safety and authority, to falsely arrest her.
It's,
You can almost feel the vulnerability women felt when this came to light.
Yeah.
The idea that someone meant to protect could so easily exploit their power.
It's a thought that really sticks with you.
It does.
The documentary digs into how investigators use technology like CCTV and digital footprints to piece together Cousine's movements.
Right.
Like a digital dragnet closing in.
Absolutely.
It makes you wonder about the trade-offs between safety and privacy.
For sure. For sure.
Doesn't it?
100%.
Yeah.
This case throws a huge spotlight on that dilemma.
Yeah.
But should we shift gears for a moment?
Yeah.
The documentary doesn't just focus on the crime itself.
Right.
It goes back to Couzens' past.
Okay.
And that's where things get really unsettling.
Yeah, we're talking way before he even joined the force.
Yeah.
A schoolmate describes him as this kid already fascinated with violence, even enjoying inflicting pain.
Really?
The documentary shows he was even nicknamed the rapist later on.
Oh, gosh.
While working as a security guard.
That's disturbing.
It makes you think, how did someone like this end up as a police officer, let alone in an elite unit guarding important figures?
I mean, that's the million-dollar question, right?
Yeah.
Was this a failure of the system?
Right.
Or was it just impossible to predict such a drastic escalation?
Yeah.
The documentary features interviews with former officers who suggest that the vetting process might have been more about filling positions quickly than really scrutinizing.
So quantity over quality in police recruitment.
Essentially, yeah.
That's a chilling thought.
It is.
But surely someone, somewhere, must have noticed these red flags.
Well, there were whispers, for sure.
Okay.
But it seems a culture of silence, or perhaps even fear, prevented those whispers from turning into shouts.
Right.
The documentary highlights how some colleagues noticed disturbing behavior but didn't report it.
Wow.
It raises the question, what kind of environment allows this type of silence to flourish?
And what does that say about the overall culture within law enforcement? We got a lot more to unpack here. So we left off talking about this culture of silence that might have shielded Couzens. You know, it's a tough pill to swallow. This idea that even within law enforcement, speaking up can be so difficult.
For sure.
But this case, unfortunately, wasn't isolated.
Sadly not. The documentary also delves into other instances of police misconduct, particularly against women.
Yeah.
And it's not just physical violence we hear about, though.
Right.
Pervasive fear of reporting this sense of powerlessness when facing those meant to protect.
It's like a breach of trust on an institutional level.
Absolutely.
And to add to the heartbreak, there's the case of David Carrick.
Yes.
Another officer in the same unit as Couzens.
Right.
Who turned out to be a serial rapist.
The parallels are chilling.
Yeah.
Carrick was actually nicknamed the Bastard by colleagues, suggesting his behavior wasn't exactly a secret.
Right.
Yet he remained in his position, continuing to abuse his power for years.
It begs the question, what systems failed to prevent this?
Right.
Not just once, but twice.
Exactly.
We're talking about a unit tasked with protecting high-profile figures.
I know.
And within it, not one, but two predators.
Right.
You start to wonder, is this a reflection of a wider culture within policing?
Well, the documentary doesn't shy away from exploring that possibility.
Okay.
It brings up the discovery of a WhatsApp group where officers, including Couzens, shared offensive memes and jokes.
Wow.
Many of them normalizing violence against women.
It wasn't just locker room talk. It was a glimpse into a mindset.
Absolutely.
A culture that tolerated, perhaps even encouraged this kind of behavior.
Yeah, for sure.
And that brings us to the question of reform.
Okay.
The documentary highlights the public outcry.
Right.
After these cases came to light.
Of course.
There were vigils protests.
Yeah.
And demands for accountability.
Yeah.
Did it lead to any real change within the police force?
The documentary shows that there were indeed investigations, reviews, and promises of reform. Over 1,000 staff members were scrutinized.
Wow.
And more than 1,600 cases of alleged sexual offenses or domestic violence involving police officers were reviewed.
That's a huge undertaking.
It is.
But it also raises the question, is it enough?
Right.
Are these actions tackling the root of the problem?
Yeah.
Or are they just a temporary response to public pressure?
It's a valid concern. Changing ingrained cultural issues isn't a quick fix.
Right.
The documentary leaves us with a sense of cautious optimism. But also a recognition that the battle for true reform is far from over.
And what about the bigger picture?
Yeah.
Is this just a problem within the UK police force?
Right.
Or are these issues present in law enforcement globally?
That's where things get even more complex. While the documentary focuses on the UK, the themes it explores resonate far beyond national borders.
Right.
Abuse of power, a culture of silence, and systemic failures.
Yeah.
These are sadly not unique to any one institution or country.
So where do we go from here?
Right.
What can we as individuals do to address these issues?
Well, the documentary emphasizes the importance of continued vigilance. We can't become complacent.
Right.
We need to scrutinize, ask questions, and hold those in power accountable.
So essentially, we need to stay informed and engaged.
Exactly.
So we've been talking about this need for change, this need for reform in the wake of these horrific cases. But change doesn't just happen overnight, right?
No, it doesn't.
It needs a push.
It does.
And the documentary gives us a glimpse of where that push might be coming from.
Well, one of the most striking aspects of the documentary is that it focuses on the individuals who are demanding better.
Right.
You see everyday people, outraged, heartbroken, coming together to demand accountability.
Right.
You see activists and advocates pushing for systemic change. And you see people within law enforcement itself, those who recognize the problems and are brave enough to speak out.
So it's a reminder that change can start from anywhere.
Absolutely.
It can be sparked by public outcry, by tireless campaigning, or by individuals within institutions choosing to break the silence.
Exactly.
And the documentary highlights this point. It might surprise some. The connection between seemingly minor offenses and the potential for escalation.
Specifically, Couzens had a history of indecent exposure, even flashing someone just days before Sarah's murder.
It's chilling to think about.
It's chilling to think about. If those incidents had been taken more seriously, could the tragedy have been prevented?
That's the question the documentary grapples with. Experts argue that, we need to view indecent exposure not as this harmless prank, but as a potential warning sign. It's about understanding patterns and recognizing when intervention is necessary.
And that intervention needs to be multifaceted, right?
Yes.
It's not just about punishing perpetrators. It's also about addressing the underlying issues that lead to these behaviors.
Absolutely.
That involves providing support and resources, not just for victims, but for those who commit these offenses as well.
Precisely. It's a complex issue. That requires a complex solution.
And one of the most important steps is changing societal attitudes. We need to stop minimizing these offenses and start recognizing them for what they are. Harmful actions that can have devastating consequences.
As we've been discussing this, it's been impossible to ignore the sheer number of cases the documentary brings to light. It feels relentless.
It does.
Like an endless wave of stories, each more horrifying than the last.
It's overwhelming. And that's precisely the point. The documentary isn't shying away from the magnitude of the problem. And it's essential to remember that these are just the cases we know about. There are countless others that remain hidden.
So what can we take away from all this?
Yeah.
What's the one thing you hope listeners will remember?
For me,
this deep dive.
It's about recognizing our own power.
Okay.
We can't afford to be passive observers.
Right.
We need to stay informed, engaged, and hold those in power accountable.
Right. Whether it's through our vote, our voice, or our support for organizations pushing for change.
Right.
We all have a role to play.
Yeah.
In creating a safer society.
It's a call to action.
It is.
Not a moment for despair.
Right.
And I think that's the message the documentary leaves us with.
Absolutely.
That even in the face of such darkness, there is hope.
There is.
There are people fighting for change.
Right.
There are systems being challenged.
Right.
And there is a growing awareness
of
the need for justice and accountability.
Absolutely. The conversation has started.
Right.
And it's up to all of us to keep it going.
And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive.
Okay.
It's been heavy, but it's also been a reminder of the power of awareness, the importance of speaking out, and the potential for change.
Sure.
To our listeners, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Stay informed.
Stay engaged.
Stay engaged.
And most importantly,
never stop questioning.
Never stop questioning. Until next time, keep diving deep.
Oh.